Okay, so the next example we're going to look at is finding the mean and mode for group data. So remember in the last sections we were worked with frequency distributions in group data, and sometimes we need to find the mean and mode of that group data. Now we can't find them, we could find, no, we can't find the median because we don't have all the data to list. When you have group data or frequency distributions, you've lost all the individual data points. And we can't find the mid-range for the same reason we don't really have the smallest and the largest data point. We just know what category they lie in. But we can estimate the mean and we can figure out the modal class is what it's called. So we can find the mean of the group data. That's going to be an estimate, so it's a sample mean. And we can find what's called the modal class. Now to do this, we have to, of course, find some extra values for this data set. So the first thing that we do, we have these class boundaries. Okay, let me make that a little bit easier to work with. So class boundaries. And we're going to work with the class boundaries, the frequency, and we're going to call frequency F. We're going to do midpoint, and I'm going to call that X sub M. Just go with me on this. And we're going to then find the frequency times the midpoint. And that'll help us find, so frequency times the midpoint. And that's what we're going to use to help find the mean value. So let's write down some of these things that we have. So for this example, we have 47.5 to 54.5, and the frequency is 3, 54.5 to 61.5, and the frequency is 2, 61.5 to 68.5, the frequency is 9, 68.5 to 75.5, the frequency is 13, 75.5 to 82.5. We get 8, 82.5 to 89.5, and that's 3, 89.5 to 96.5, and that's 2. Now remember, the midpoint we can find by adding the upper and lower bounds of the class and dividing by 2. So let's do that. So the first class is 47.5 plus 54.5. Whoops. 47.5 plus 54.5 divided by 2 is 51. So the midpoint here is 51. And what I did is I went 47.5 plus 54.5, found that sum, and divided by 2. Now, if you notice, every class width is 7. It goes up 7. So it should be, the next one should be 51 plus 7, which is what, 58. So let's try it just to make sure. 54.5 plus 61.5 divided by 2 is 58. So this is going up 7 each time. So if I add 7 to each one of these, that should be the next midpoint. So this is 65. 65 and 7 is 72, and 7 is 79, and 7 is 86, and 7 is 93. Okay. Now what we want to do is multiply the frequency times the midpoint. And the reason we're doing that is we're kind of basically saying that I don't know what all the data is in the first class, but I can approximate all of that data in the first class by taking its average value, which is its midpoint value. So 51 should be the average value of all the data points in that class because that's the midpoint of the class. Now, in that class, I have 3 data points. So the total in that class would be 3 times 51. If I were to add up all 3 data points in that class and I'm approximating all those data points by the midpoint, then the sum of those 3 data points would be equivalent or close to 3 times 51. So we're going to go 3 times 51 and get a number here. So that's 153. And then we keep doing that. The next one is 2 times 58. And that's 116. And then we have 9 times 65. It's 585. 13 times 72. That's going to be big. 936. 8 times 79. 632. 3 times 86. 258. And 2 times 93. 186. All right. Now, the mean, remember before when we found the mean, it was the sum of all the data points divided by the sum of divided by the total number of data points. Now, we have to find those types of values in this set. Now, the total number of data points is n, and n is equal to the sum of all the frequencies. So we're going to add up the frequency row column. 3 plus 2 plus 9 plus 13 plus 3 plus 2. And that gave us 40 data points. So that makes sense. So it said that we were looking at the wind speeds in 40 states. Now the sum of all the data, that's that E variable. So that's that thing that looks like that. That's a summation symbol. That sum of all those X values is going to be the sum of this column frequency times midpoint. So we have to add up all these values. And I get 2866. So now my mean is going to be, sorry, let me get rid of this. My mean is going to be the sum of, so remember X bar is the sum of all the data points divided by the total number of data points. So that's going to be our 2866 divided by 40. So that's the mean is 71.65. And if we look up here, I think this is shows the maximum speeds in the 40 states. I think it's in miles per hour. Okay. So that's how we find the mean of a group data. It's you got to create these two columns, the midpoint column and the frequency times the midpoint column. Then we add the frequency and we add the frequency times the midpoint. So if it's got frequency in it, you want to add, and then divide the frequency times midpoint divided by the frequency, so total. And that'll give us our mean value. Now modal class is a lot easier. Modal class is just the class, in this case the class boundaries, that contains the highest frequency. So the highest frequency is 13, so the modal class is that 68.5 to 75.5. And that's our modal class. All right, so that's the end of this example, showing you how to find the mean and modal class for group data. We have one more type of data that we want to look at, and this is to do weighted means. So we'll look at that in just a second.